Hi, and welcome to SCW Rewind, the retro review of 1994's King of the Ring, the show that is famous for Owen Hart winning the King of the Ring tournament. It was the second ever one in WWE. And of course, there are many other big talking points on this show, including Roddy Piper versus Jerry Lawler, which was the main event of the show. You had Bret Hart versus Diesel, champion versus champion. But of course, only one championship was on the line, which was Bret Hart's. And of course, the infamous Donavon commentary. Looking forward to diving in all that and so much more. My special guest will be joining me straight after the intro. It gives me great pleasure to welcome back to SCW, the one, the only, Barry from NonStop Wrestling Chat. Barry, how are you doing?
I'm fantastic, man. How are you? It's great to be back on the channel.
It's great to have you back here. Obviously, King of the Ring 1994 is the show that we are going to be covering here. When you first learned this was the show that we were going to be reviewing, what were your initial thoughts?
I totally forgot about this show. I know Owen Hart won the King of the Ring, but every single match on it, I didn't have literally went in blind, couldn't remember it. And then I was like, I think I remember what this one is. And Steve's gave me another shit show to review.
Well, obviously, the most famous thing about this show, of course, Owen Hart, and at the time we're recording this, for anyone that watches this at a later date, the Owen Hart tournament is going on in AEW right now, so it felt like a nice fitting show to do at this point. This is definitely one of the high-profile moments of Owen Hart's great career, and of course, he was in the feud with Bret Hart going on as well that started early point of 1994, would carry on to SummerSlam, which, of course, if I'm not mistaken, is one of your favourite matches of all time with the blue steel cage.
Yep, it's my favourite match of all time, just as the perfect cage match, I think. I don't think there's been one that's beat it since, and I don't think there ever will be.
Yeah, it's a true classic indeed there. And obviously, so someone that knows all about this feud, this rivalry, the progression of storyline is none other than Barry. So you're the perfect one for this stream here today. But just for those that are joining us now, if you want to get involved live, if you are watching live and you want to get involved in the chat with your memories of this show, then please do feel free to drop a comment in and we'll bring it up and we'll give you a shout out live on air. Of course, if you want to just say hello as well, feel free to do that also. It's always very helpful getting involved with the chat. But also looking forward to those people as well that are watching this on delay to know your thoughts of this show. So without further ado, this show took place on Father's Day. This show took place in Baltimore, Maryland, in the Baltimore Arena. And of course, it was the 19th of June, 1994. And well, to kick things off, really, the video package we had to sort of start off the night. Basically, was just Todd being killed, just basically hyping up the matches that we had on the show. It was basic to the point, but what were your thoughts of this?
It was okay, when it wasn't really anything special. It was kind of that period in wrestling as well, like the WWF after WrestleMania. It was just kind of everything was kind of simplified until they got into the like SummerSlam and stuff later on in the year. King of the Ring was always that kind of relaxed pay-per-view, if I remember right back then.
Yeah, absolutely. It was the one in between WrestleMania and SummerSlam. And what was really key about it was it's only second ever pay-per-view incarnation. Of course, the first one was won by Bret the Hitman Hart. That led a lot of storyline telling going into this as well, because, of course, Bret infamously won the first one. Owen Hart, it was in his mind that he was going to win the second one. That was the goal here, playing with that storyline. So, yeah, I mean, it was really exciting stuff indeed. And, of course, what I like about the King of the Ring back then as well was that they kind of had those set rules, didn't they? They had the quarterfinal matches. They had to qualify first off to get there, but once they got there, they had 15-minute time limits for the quarterfinal matches, 30 minutes for the semi-finals, and an hour if needed for the final. So I thought that was very in one night. That would change later on in WWE history. Of course, you would see the likes of the latter King of the Rings, for example, having just the semi-finals and the final. Do you like this structure better, where it's all 8 men, one night, the full tournament?
Yeah, I think this structure's the best way to hold it until like you get your Raw and whatever you have your kind of qualifying matches on it, then you get into the pay-per-view. You've got the nice wee tournament there. You get the finish, you get somebody crowned or whatever you want to do with it, and it just flows nicely because you want to watch the rest of the pay-per-view to see how it goes. Like I said, later on, the way they kind of do it now as well, for me, just doesn't really work as much. But back then, I thought it was such a cool pay-per-view, and it's King of the Ring 99 is one of my favourite pay-per-views of all time, so I love King of the Ring.
Absolutely. Maybe one day that'll be a retro review here on the channel. I have to wait and see. But definitely, yeah, they've had some great King of the Ring, some great classic moments throughout the years. And of course, going on to the commentary team, let's start off with this very hot show. With the commentary team, we had a trio for this show. We had Gorilla Monsoon that was a part of this. We had Macho Man Randy Savage, who was inactive in the ring at the time. Of course, he wouldn't go back to the ring till he got to WCW. And of course, we had NFL player that was very popular, I think, in the Baltimore area at that point, was Art Donavon. Now, Art Donavon, to say the very least, his wrestling knowledge was limited, to say the very least. It felt like that when they asked him who would win King of the Ring, you know, what says you picked when you say, is that the guy I picked on commentary? Razor Ramon was his choice. He went through different stages of the evening where he was asking the weight famously of almost every wrestler, and you know, what do they like? Is this how they behave? It got to the point where Gorilla Monsoon would actually just ignore what was being said and would continue talking to the Macho Man. What were your thoughts of Art Donavon on commentary?
Man, it was terrible, wasn't it? It really was. Like, it was funny terrible. Like, it was really bad. Like, why is this guy there? He knows nothing about wrestling. He knows, like, nothing about what's going on. And he just spoke for just speaking's sake. Like, he just I don't know, he just spoke for the sake of it. Like, he did. It was so confusing as well. It was like, why is he here? Why is he?
Yeah.
Why is he asking weight? Why was he always asking their weight? Like, there was no need. Like, I think it was 1-2-3 Kid when he came out, and he was like, "What does he weigh?" And Randy Savage says something like, "It doesn't matter what he weighs. Just get on with what you're trying to do." But it was terrible, man. It was really, it was really bad.
It disrupted the flow, to say the very least, didn't it? I mean, Gorilla Monsoon, bless him, this was his first show that he was calling since the Royal Rumble in 1993. Of course, he had Bobby Heenan, if I'm not mistaken, with him on that show. So, I mean, of course, to go from that to Art Donavon, you could see that he was losing patience by the end of it. But obviously, Vince McMahon was not present either around this particular time. Obviously, this was going around the time of the steroid scandal. And, of course, he'd had neck surgery the week prior to this, and he was recovering from that. Obviously, if you've seen the steroid trials, you can see Vince McMahon is wearing a neck brace around that time. So obviously he's absent from this show completely. Do you think Vince was a miss? Because Vince was always very entertaining in commentary around this sort of time period.
I think if Vince wasn't there and they just went for Gorilla and Macho Man, it could have worked a little bit better or found somebody better than the other guy they had on, because that was terrible. But Vince not being there was kind of a miss for the show as well, because like you said, at that point he was kind of known as the voices of WWE at that point as well. So it was weird him not being there, but obviously he had a neck injury, so he couldn't get about there when he was doing that.
No, absolutely not. And obviously, we see all the heels backstage as well, kind of arguing who was going to win King of the Ring, all sort of putting their name, because you get the full tournament where the names get moved over. It's not graphically done. We're in 1994 here, you know. Actually, got to move the names over, which I thought was quite fun as well. There, do you like seeing all the heels argue with each other?
I thought it was an interesting way of opening it. It was kind of cheesy because he had all the gimmicks, like all the fucking like Double J and all the silly gimmicks. But it was fun, like you said, with the 90s board when they actually had to peel it off with the Velcro and physically move the name over instead of from getting this like virtual stuff that we get now. But it was cool. It was a cool way to open the show, I think, with that kind of just like all these characters. If you wanted to get a gist of 1990 heels, just go there. Well, early 1990 heels, and you'll just get it.
Absolutely, indeed, Dano. You couldn't be wrong, indeed. And obviously, one of those heels was Bam Bam Bigalow. He was involved in the opening match of the evening against Donovan's pick, Razor Ramon. And obviously, he didn't have a clue when he come through the curtain. Is this the guy? This was the opening match, the King of the Ring quarterfinals match, and not a very long match to kick things off with, as none of them really were these quarterfinal matches. But obviously, Razor Ramon managed to get an early advantage when Bam Bam Bigalow missed the diving headbutt off the top rope. There come a point then where Luna Vachon was randomly on the apron trying to distract the referee when both men were on the floor. I don't quite know why she was doing that, because Bam Bam wasn't really getting much of an advantage, it felt, at that point. But then there was a really interesting one where Razor Ramon just was in a torture rack, which felt like it was forever. It just never seemed. It almost felt like Bam Bam had fell asleep holding him up in the air. I don't know if you felt the same watching that.
100%, man. Honestly, at one point I was like, is Razor, like, is it hurting Bam Bam? Like, is it like meant to be the other way around? Like he's trying to get him in a sleeper or something? But it felt like they were in the middle of the ring for a good half the match just standing there, didn't it?
Yeah, literally, it was like that. It was very, very weird. But obviously, we got to the finish. Bam Bam was on top at that point. It looked like he was going to go for a moonsault on the top off the top rope because Bam Bam, he's a big dude, the Beast from the East, but he can move around. He definitely can fly. But this way, he was flying the wrong direction because Razor managed to sort of kind of almost an assisted one-arm powerbomb him off the top rope and use that then to just roll him up afterwards there to get the victory. I thought that this was an interesting opener, but a fairly hot start as well. It was nice to get the babyface go over, and I'm a big fan of both Razor and Bam Bam.
Yeah, I'm the same, man. I'm a huge fan of both these guys. I think both kind of fantastic. There was no kind of arguments with the first match. It was like 8 minutes or something like that. And it was just a fun, easy watch match apart from that fucking thing they had to stand in the middle of the ring for a long time for no reason.
Absolutely, indeed. I mean, obviously, Dave Meltzer gives this a 1 3/4 star. And like you said, that the match was 8 minutes and 24 seconds, which actually is the longest of all the quarterfinal matches. Do you think that Dave is being harsh or being polite with this 1 3/4 star rating?
I think just because of how much I like Razor Ramon and Bam Bam, I think he's been a wee bit harsh. But I gave it 2 stars out of 5 because it was a good opener. It's always cool to see Bam Bam and Razor in the ring, plus how agile Bam Bam is for being a bigger guy. But it was okay. It's not like I'm going to go back and rewatch it anytime soon.
No, absolutely not. No, it's kind of it has a purpose. It has a job, and it fulfills that job without sort of creating too much newsworthy stuff. But I think a 2-star is a fair rating for this one because literally it's a job that needs to be done. Razor, I think, is the right guy going through here. What's a nice touch about this as well is that Bam Bam was a finalist in the 1993 King of the Ring tournament. So the fact that he's the first person out here almost elevates this tournament immediately. I thought that was quite a nice little touch they added.
Yeah, I think as well they used it kind of smart as well. I think it was Bam Bam bet Spark Plug before this, I think it was, and it was telling a story of how Bam Bam's coming back to win after he missed out on the opportunity last year. I was watching the Raws and stuff as well for you, Steve. But
fun.
It was a cool story, cool opener. It did what it had to do, like you says. It was nothing that's going to steal the show. We're not going to be talking about it in the history books, but it was there and it was good.
Absolutely. I can't wait to get your thoughts on the King Court segments then on Monday Night Raw later in this stream. But let's talk about that right now, the better. We'll go on to what was our second qualifying match here, or the second quarterfinal match, I should say. But they did have an altercation backstage, IRS kind of overlooking Mabel, saying he was going to be facing Razor in the semi-finals. And Mabel's kind of saying that, well, actually, he's going to focus things head on. But if he does face Razor Ramon, that he's the true bad guy. In 95, that would be the case. But this match here between these two, I'd say was a bit clumsy, to say the very least. I couldn't really get into it. The finish was a bit of a clumsy sort of shake of the ropes, and Mabel kind of fell off as well. It's almost a bit of a similar sway to the first one, but just not done as well. And Owen Hart managed to get the roll-up victory. I wasn't a fan of this match. What were your thoughts?
Man, this was terrible. I was starting to curse you out here. I was like, I fucking made us watch this. Because I still remember back with Rated R, we done the WrestleMania, the Caesar Palace one that we done. And I was like, this is maybe just as bad as this. But the best part about this was Mabel's entrance, wasn't it? Apart from that, seeing them in these sequins and the wee rap thing that they were doing was pretty cool. But apart from that, this was terrible, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I have to agree. Yeah, because of course, Men on the Mission, it was Oscar that was doing the rap, wasn't it, on the way to the ring? And like you say, yeah, getting everyone going like the whoop, there it is. Very classic 90s was, fun time with that entrance. But yeah, the fun stopped as soon as the bell rung. I think that's the fair way to put it. And thankfully, this match wasn't as long of the matches there. I mean, this one went 5 minutes and 34 seconds. It was the third longest match here, but it was given half a star by Mr. Dave Meltzer. I think that could even be potentially generous. What were your thoughts?
I did want it nothing. I'm giving it 9 out of 5. Like, if you get a chance to watch this, like on the WWE Network, you can just skip by this. Just skip by it, because watch the entrance and then just skip, because it'll piss you off.
Put it this way, this is why we've done it in a review, not watch along, because then we watch it so you don't have to. We're generous people, that's what we're thinking. But for turning up, I'm going to give them a 1/4 star. They turned up and it did progress to get us to another match later in the evening. We needed a winner from somewhere, but apart from that, there isn't really much to take from it. But obviously, following this, then we had backstage. I think it's like the network version is the Coliseum video version, so I think we get extra bits that perhaps you wouldn't have got on the pay-per-view. One being obviously Yokozuna, Crush, Mr. Fuji, and James E. Cornette. I want to say Jim Cornette every time. And James E. just basically saying they're going to win the tag team titles. There's not much more to it. And then for us to get out because they don't want us to know their strategy. There's not really much to fill in on this, unfortunately. But what is a lot to fill on in is we finally get to talk about Owen Hart for the first time of the evening. Match 3, Owen Hart versus Tatanka in the King of the Ring quarter-final here. And this match for me, I thought was decent. You could just see a difference in both performers, the fact that every move was crisp, how good Owen Hart was in the ring. What were your thoughts watching this? So obviously, this is our first glimpse of Owen Hart here, and seeing him at that point, he was seen head and shoulders above the rest.
So I wasn't really a big Tatanka fan, but I've been going back and appreciating some of his stuff that he was doing, but I still want to say that he's my favourite guy to go back and watch. But Owen Hart here kind of took this match and just like, it was probably one of the better in the tournament because it was a pretty terrible tournament. But this one was just so good. The guy, both of them worked well together, and just seeing Owen Hart work the way we all know that he can work was just fun to see.
Absolutely, indeed. There. I mean, obviously, going just into a bit of details of the match, actually, Owen Hart was attacked before the bell, which is a bit of a weird thing because Tatanka's the babyface and Owen Hart is the heel here, the Rocket Owen Hart. The match did soon go to the ringside area where that's where Hart actually gained the advantage. There was a sleeper hold by Hart, but then a DDT by Tatanka. And what I really liked was the finish of this match. It's probably my favorite part of the whole thing was that we had like a sunset flip from Tatanka, and then Owen Hart reversed that, holding onto the legs and going forward down. This was actually the exact finish of the SummerSlam 1992 match where Bret Hart was pinned by the British Bulldog. And I wonder if that was a tribute to that there, showing his storytelling because he knows how to beat Bret the Hitman Hart. He'd done so at WrestleMania 10 and sort of pulling that out of the bag. Did you get that vibe watching that as well?
Yeah, 100%. I think it was just keep that long-term story building with it from WrestleMania 10 through to King of the Ring and either SummerSlam match. Just him always thinking he's got Bret's card and then he never really gets it, and holding that kind of WrestleMania 10 victory over him, which is good storytelling compared to today's stuff. But back then, it was good. The other thing as well, Owen Hart beat Doink the Clown. You know, if Doink the Clown was in this, I wouldn't have been on this show because I couldn't have handled that much terribleness in the one show. But that match was horrible on the Raw before it, or a couple of ones before it. It was just terrible before it. But at least this one was good.
Absolutely. Well, Doink was actually a last-minute replacement, I believe. If I'm not mistaken, Earthquake was meant to be the guy in position. But actually, Earthquake had left the company because he'd been doing a lot of jobbing to Yokozuna on house shows, which he didn't want to do. So he went and jumped off to WCW, ended up being with Kevin Sullivan and Brutus Beefcake, which, of course, I believe was called The Butcher at the time in a stable against Hogan, which, yeah, less said about that, I guess, the better, really. It's definitely for a different day, that one. But we will tackle all the sort of backstage segments after this are more based around the Bret Hart Diesel match. So we'll take that when we get to that match. Instead, what we'll do is we'll actually go to... actually, before we do, I don't think I gave Dave Meltzer's rating here for Owen Hart versus Tatanka. He actually gave this a 3 1/4 star rating. What rating would you have given this match?
Like a 2.5. Like it was still quite short. So if it was a wee bit longer, you could have maybe went up to there. But I'd say maybe 2.5, 2. 2.5. I'll be generous because Owen Hart looked good in this one.
Absolutely. No, do you know what? I have to agree with you. I think 2.5 is the right way because, yes, it had 8 minutes and 18 seconds, but these matches don't really have enough time to tell a story in it. Although there is one match that is shorter than this with Owen Hart, which will get a high rating from me because actually they did maximize so much with that time later on. And that sort of comes into detail as we come into match number 4, which is the final quarterfinal match in the King of the Ring tournament. It's the 1, 2, 3 kids. Sean Waltman taking on Double J, Jeff Jarrett. And I'm not going to do the J. No, I'm going to do it. J-A-E-E-R. No, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do the old thing that he used to do because, yeah, why should I? But this was a fun match between these two. What did you think of Jeff Jarrett against the 1, 2, 3 kid?
And I don't like Jeff Jarrett at all. I just can't stand him. He's just in ring stuff. It just bores me. And this match was just boring. And why was it so short? Like, I know the other one is going to get a better rating, but this one was just badly shot, but in a good way. It was short, so then I didn't need to watch Jeff Jarrett so much in the ring, especially where it was the thing around his neck with the tassel things. I don't know what you call them, and it was just
Yeah.
awkward. So I'd zoned out in this one, but the right person got the win to go through in here.
Absolutely, yeah. The 1-2-3 Kid did make the shock win there over Jeff Jarrett during this match, and obviously Jeff Jarrett kind of was like taking the early advantage, had injured or had done a bit of a kayfabe injury to the Kid's knee, did the figure 4 leg lock, but the Kid managed to get a small package to get the victory. But of course, Jeff Jarrett really adds to the storytelling of this. Is really what comes at the end of it is the fact that Jeff Jarrett's so upset at being upset here by the Kid that he actually lands 3 pile drivers after the match, and then comes flying very badly off the second rope, I might add, to land on the Kid a couple of times as well with fist bumps. And obviously the Kid at this point, the big question is, will he be able to make it to the semi-final match? He needs help out of there. But what were your thoughts of this after-match beatdown? Do you reckon it's good that they had a bit of extra storytelling intrigue to go into this King of the Ring tournament?
So I'm going to kind of go back on what I just said about the match being shit. The aftermath was good. The pile drivers looked fantastic. You were like, at the time, you would have been like, how's 1-2-3 Kid going to go on? He's not going to be able to win, all that kind of stuff. So it's made sense, didn't it? Like it literally made sense. Telling a story, getting you invested in further development within the King of the Ring and who's going to win this and stuff like that as well, which I thought was cool. But those pile drivers were fantastic looking, which we don't see a lot of them in today's wrestling, but they really looked good.
They really, really did. I really enjoyed them. And obviously with the Kid there, you mentioned that it was a short match. This was the shortest match of the quarterfinals, only 4 minutes and 39 seconds. Not the shortest match, though, of the whole tournament. But 2.25 star given from Big Dave on this one. I think that, personally, I think that's kind of right for this because there was excitement in it in a way, but it's more for the fact of the aftermath that gets it up to its rating that I would say that I would agree with Dave.
I'd say a 1.5 with the aftermath in it. Without that, it is probably a dud, wouldn't it? The aftermath kind of gets it right up to that 1.5 because it was just told the story and it made sense, but the match itself just didn't work. And again, that's the point in wrestling, isn't it? If you just watch the match, you're going to miss out on the actual aftermath story part. If you just watch that match, it's going to be terrible. But taking an extra bit brings up this kind of score of the match because then it makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah, totally, and obviously we'll come back to that later on because, of course, the thing I like is the question mark of will there be a bye later on the tournament? Because obviously there was a bye in the 1993 tournament. Tatanka and Lex Luger, if I'm not mistaken, they were the ones that drew, so that's what gave Bam Bam Bigalow from the quarters a bye through to the final. We didn't have to wrestle in the semi, so we had a different question mark again, but we had a different reason for it. It wasn't the time limit draw; it was the fact that 1-2-3 Kid may not be able to go. But we'll come back to that later on in the stream because, well, we've had the quarterfinals and we need to have a bit of a break from that because these guys could be wrestling 3 times in one night. What do? You're going to throw in the WWE Championship match next. You can have Bret the Hitman Hart with a family member that was not given away until he would make his entrance to the ring against Diesel, who was the current Intercontinental Champion, with Shawn Michaels, the bodyguard at this point. It was champion versus champion. Now, backstage beforehand, we can take these now together. Diesel had said that 2 words, jackknife powerbomb, that's what's going to do it because he jackknife powerbombed Bret Hart on the Raws leading up, and Bret Hart had said that he'd not felt anything like it was excruciating, painful, and Shawn Michaels very happy with the idea of saying, well, you know, I do feel bad for Bret that we're putting through so much pain, but you can see the sarcasm and the smugness, classic 90s HBK. And Bret Hart, of course, when he got to his interview time, said he wasn't sure, you know, if he'd be able to kick out of it, but he wasn't going to let that opportunity happen again. He said that, you know, he was being underestimated and Diesel was overestimating himself. What did you think of these sort of interview packages we had before the match?
I think the interviews really set it up to like just how made Diesel seem important compared to Bret Hart, and that Bret wasn't. Is he going to be able to overcome the jackknife? Just telling that wee bit of story as well, like just before it, really helped. I always loved that 90s style, the wee interviews that they used to do, like in the locker room and stuff like that, and it just kind of build up the match, give you that kind of big fight feeling before that kind of type of match. Now I know they do that sometimes now, but back then it just felt more interesting because you were like getting a sneak peek into the wrestlers at the back. Obviously, everybody can just go to a dirt sheet now and kind of look at what everybody's bullshitting about wrestling. But back then, it felt like you were really getting kind of behind the scenes, which I liked them. I love them. I still love them to this day, going back and watching it and seeing those wee clips.
Absolutely. I know, just because of the fact, like you said, that it's not as accessible as it is now. It's so easy to do. Like you say, it just feels all that more special. You almost feel like we're stuck in a different time now. And I think that's why a lot of old school fans kind of want to go through that time capsule and just go back a little bit and feel those feelings again when you're watching some of these shows.
Definitely, man. It would be cool if we could just take that little, just turn off Twitter for a couple of weeks so we can just enjoy the interviews and stuff like that, enjoy the shows just for what they are instead of from worrying what's everybody else thinking about, making a review or whatever. You can just enjoy it, and there is still enjoyment there sometimes if you squint and they're in a different room, but it's still there sometimes. Back then, it just worked better. Like, it was as if like they took the characters away and you're just listening to the actual wrestlers talk. Like, oh, I'm worried about this move, or he's not going to beat me because of this, and it was just fun to kind of see, especially back then. You never really got to see that, but there wasn't really dirt sheets or internet and stuff around. I was only 3 when this was out, so I don't know.
To be fair, even though I would have been highly into what was going on, I would not have been able to tell you what would be the situation with that at that point. But obviously, we know Meltzer's give his ratings and stuff like that, but how to when he gave them, I'm guessing he would have had some sort of a way of doing it around the time. But like you said, the dirt sheets was nowhere near as accessible. It wasn't like, all this sort of internet stuff that we have so easily in our hands today. But going into the match itself, then obviously Diesel and Shawn Michaels go to the ring. The big surprise, obviously, was who was going to be the family member that was going to come with Bret Hart to even up the odds. It was none other than Jim the Anvil Neidhart. There's a reason I left putting this on the screen. Didn't want to give it away straight away in case people didn't know. But obviously the Anvil, of course, was a part of the Hart Foundation tag team, obviously, throughout the 80s, and I think went into the very early 90s as well. So I thought this was a good choice, good selection. Jim Neidhart seems he's a very capable guy as well, keeping Shawn Michaels out of the match. What did you think?
Yeah, it was great. When I like it plays into the end as well. Like, and then plays into the further storyline to build to that Bret and Owen match at SummerSlam. So it does kind of, it's like puzzle pieces to tell this big story that's going to be at SummerSlam in a few months after this. But it makes sense for Jim Neidhart to come out, because obviously he said the Hart Foundation, and then it plays towards the end of the match. It plays into that as well.
Absolutely, indeed. There. I mean, obviously, Diesel's using his power game at the start of this match, and obviously there is a way that Bret Hart manages to get himself in there. I think Diesel misses with a big boot, sort of has his leg hanging over the rope, and from that point, I mean, Bret Hart's just going for the legs, trying to take the legs out. And one thing that I didn't know about this till after I'd watched this rewind was apparently Diesel had a groin injury going into this match. This is the longest match on the show by a country mile. We'll go into in fact, I'll just call it up now to say how long this match was. Around 22 minutes and 51 seconds. So credit to Diesel that he managed to go out there and put on what I think was a really good match as well here. Bret Hart obviously attacking the legs for a long time, but obviously Diesel managed to get himself back into it. Shawn Michaels playing his part where he could as well, trying to deal with the turnbuckle and stuff and hitting Bret Hart when the opportunity was. Bret does get the sharpshooter on Diesel as well, but Diesel manages to get to the ropes. And it just, you notice throughout portions of the match, the Anvil is being stopped by the referee every occasion to stop Michaels getting involved. But you do feel as well that the Anvil doesn't really run around the other side. We don't see him chasing Shawn at any point during this match.
Yeah, definitely. I think the match is fantastic. And they've had better matches after this and stuff like that, but this one was the best in the show for me. I think Diesel played his part good, so did Bret. The both of them kind of just put on this fantastic, fun match. The ending, I wasn't too happy with the ending. I can't wait to get your thoughts on it. But the ending was, I try to save both guys. Don't want to give them an L and stuff like that, but it just kind of felt, it left it feeling flat. But overall, that match was just fun to watch. And it was, Bret Hart here was probably at his peak or just before he hit his peak. And it was just like everything he was doing just looked great. And Diesel was still up and coming, so he was willing to take a little bit more of a chance, some more risks, and everything just looked fun. Before he got into that 5 moves of doom that he used to use, just 5 moves and that was it. He maybe had about 8 here, so it was a little bit more in depth of a Kevin style, wasn't it?
Absolutely, indeed, there, and obviously when you look at it towards the finish there of that match, there obviously Diesel does manage to hit the jackknife powerbomb once again. We're wondering, is Bret Hart going to kick out of this move? That's when the Anvil does get to Shawn Michaels, and then he gets himself into the ring, and of course then he causes the disqualification, Bret Hart losing by DQ. Like you say, it's a screwy finish. It is a bit of a, oh God, why do that? That's not a finish we want to see. But at the same time, it does make perfect sense when we get to narrative later on in the evening, because obviously, yeah, he's there to make sure and even up the odds so that Bret Hart doesn't lose the championship, so he does his job. But he doesn't stick around after the match. The Anvil just goes straight to the back. And after that point, we see Shawn and Diesel attack Bret Hart further. And you think to yourself, well, hang on, why aren't you helping Bret here? Like, you should have left together.
Yep. I think it's a cool storytelling, isn't it? Like giving those the kind of little seeds throughout the show to build up to what we're going to get later in the show, and then also the payoff that happens months down the line at SummerSlam as well. So it's interesting to kind of see long-term storytelling, and then bringing it back to today's product is seeing where we are now. Like it's lucky if we get a long-term storytelling from Monday to Friday, never mind like throughout the whole show, and then going from like 6-7 months of storytelling. But it just kind of now it's like at the end of Monday the story's been done, and you don't need to worry about ever thinking about that story again.
Absolutely. No, I mean, obviously, when you look at it as well, like you say, like, I mean, from today's market, I mean, I think storyline progression is definitely like something that we lack. Like, we get like the feuds where they're stuck in the same place. And I think that's where it's really a down point with today. And like you say, WWE can just drop a story in a moment's notice without even thinking about it. And obviously, when you get matches like this, it's very story driven, this match. Obviously, it's good, technically a good match, between these two guys. But with the storyline elements, with the fact of Shawn as well, I love the moment where Bret sort of hits Shawn Michaels actually at one point, and he goes flying off the side apron, and you just see perfect hit of that sort of steel rail. It's just it's a beautiful sound when you know Shawn's got involved so often. So there's just great layers all throughout this match, and obviously, like you say, the story is going to be something that's going to progress to later in the evening as well, which is really, really nice. But obviously, we mentioned the match is 22 minutes long. This is probably the highest rated match here, I think, from Dave Meltzer. It gives this 3 and a 3/4 star rating. And do you know what? I don't think Dave's wrong on this one. No, I think it's a very solid match. I think it's definitely a 3.5, 3.75 rating.
Yeah, I went for a 3.5. It was the ending brought it down from that 3.754 just to a 3.5. But it is definitely just a fun match to watch. Like, it's really a good match, knowing that this is just like a wee slot within a big story. It's no the finish, no the end. It's just kind of something that slots in there, like a puzzle piece. You're still building it together, and this is a key point that goes on. Plus, then you've got Bret and Shawn in the future. You've got a Bret and Diesel rematch, Bret and Owen. So you've got a ton of stuff that comes from this, which is always fun when they do storytelling good.
Absolutely, absolutely indeed there. And just say shout out to Juggernaut 0970 in the house. Hope you're doing well. He says, very solid pay-per-view. He really enjoyed this one. There's definitely some fun moments for sure. We're having a lot of fun actually digesting this one here. And we've got plenty still to go through, because we've got another, I think, is it 4 or 5 matches still to go on this show. So it's definitely a lot filled into the 2 hours and 45 minutes. So don't muck around with this one. And obviously the following contest after this, we go towards the semi-finals of the King of the Ring tournament. And of course, no strangers to one another in 1994. It is Razor Ramon versus Owen Shyster IRS in the King of the Ring semi-finals. But this one, I mean, there was an Intercontinental title feud around Royal Rumble around that period, but this match for me, it felt a bit of a dud for some reason. I don't know if it's just IRS's style, the fact that he's wearing the suit and tie kind of thing. Obviously, Razor's got him like by the tie and flinging him over at one point. It just seems a bit slow and sluggish all over the place. But Razor eventually hits the Razor's Edge and picks up the win. What were your thoughts?
This one was terrible, wasn't it? I'm never a big IRS fan guy. I just never was into him that much. That time period, obviously, I was too young to be watching wrestling at that time, but I was never into him going back and watching it. And this just cements that. It was really boring. And I don't know, something felt off with this one, didn't it? It felt like it was just a throwaway match, no need for it really to kind of be there, which is. I've rated this a dud. I didn't even give it a star. So
Well, I mean, I think for the pop for the Razor's Edge, I've got to give it half a star because that's something for me. I kind of did enjoy seeing the power. The crowd was really into the idea that Razor hit his finishing move for the first time in the evening. It was like a very conclusive finish to that match. So I think fans were really happy for that. It was definitely the right placement in the card to do so. But apart from that, there's not much else I can really say about it. I think that their previous feuds and encounters, I think, were better than this. And I mean, for some reason, a 5-minute match felt like it was 15 minutes, and that's not a good thing. So, and it's a shame to say because obviously I'm a big fan of Razor, and I don't mind IRS either in its own way. I mean, he's had some questionable gimmicks over the time, but that was one thing I was thinking during watching this actually was that being the Wall Street Walmart guy and IRS, he's not been blessed with the best gimmicks, has he?
No, I really, really hasn't. But this match for me was just like I said, Razor hitting his finish is always good. I love watching Razor and Scott Hall to hit that finish. It's great. It's unusual. Feels good. But nothing could have saved this from just being so bad. Like it was like why? It was like 15 minutes. I keep chatting on the network to be like, how long have I been watching this? It's only been when you flick between the two wee bits, see when it's going to finish, and it's like 5 minutes long. I'm like, fuck, I've been watching this for about 4 hours or something, but it was.
Yeah.
Don't know how they made this drag out over 5 minutes as well. They seemed like they only done like 4 or 5 moves in it, which was weird.
There was a long rest hold from IRS on Razor. Maybe that could have felt it as well. But yeah, it was a bit of a toughie, this one. So we would suggest that maybe watch the finish. Don't worry about the rest of it. You don't want to waste the rest of your day. But there was a big question then, as we said. Top and Gill was backstage, obviously doing the Velcro, moving things along because we didn't have it digitally back in those days. And of course, it was a moment where it was, well, I'm meant to be here with the 1-2-3 kid. I'm supposed to interview him, but he's not here. So I don't know. He might not be wrestling. I don't know what's going to happen. Let's go back to ringside and let's find out. And of course, we were to find out because Owen Hart, the King of Hearts, going to eventually become the King of Hearts. Spoiler there. The Rocket, of course, at that point was waiting in the ring. And of course, the 1-2-3 Kids music hit. And obviously, nothing happened for a while. We were waiting for a long time, but just as it sort of cut away to something else, he comes through. So you hear Gorilla Monsoon first going, "Oh, he's here," and then obviously he comes out, and we have these two have what is the shortest match of every match on this card. It's 3 minutes and 37 seconds. But my goodness, how the last match felt like 15 minutes. This absolutely flew by, but they absolutely maximized their moments. Owen Hart instantly goes out to the floor and does a baseball slide, and then just hitting his big moves early doors on the 1-2-3 Kid, trying to get the pinfall 1, 2, and obviously just that last split second, they're having those near falls that you used to seeing today. It's sort of Sean Woodman would just get his arm up, but he would actually get back into the match as well, hitting the spinning leg kick as well, getting a few near falls himself. And one other move that I really, really liked before we got near to the finish, Owen Hart actually hitting an Insuguri. It's one of my favorite moves that we just don't see these days. But then we get towards the closing end of the match, and another nice little touch as well to, I think, WrestleMania 10. The sort of famous victory roll-up was done by the 1-2-3 Kid, which, of course, then Owen was the counter, but it was kicked out of this time rather than actually getting the full pinfall. But then Owen, of course, managed to hit a move there to get the finish. What were your thoughts with this? I actually thought this was a solid encounter between these two in the couple of minutes they got.
I think this has to be one of the best matches ever of under 5 minutes, didn't it? Like I don't think there could be one that's under 5 minutes that's topped this. Maybe one or two, but I think this is probably the best under 5 minute match. It just left you wanting to see these guys in that ring again. Like it was just so much going on, and like what's that, a 3 minute time kind of period? You're like, why are you only giving me 3 minutes for this? And then the main event they give you 15 for or whatever it was. It's like, why are you giving me?
Yeah,
like give me more of this. This was fantastic. It was fast paced. The 1-2-3 Kid was where he done that jump out of the ring to the floor looked fantastic, and just everything they done was great. Plus the sharpshooter just looked really good in this one. This one was fantastic. This is probably my moment of the night. Is just that wee match was just, it made the show, didn't it? It was just what the King of the Ring could be, and plus the commentators keep forcing down our throats. It's a new generation. This is a new generation because Hulk Hogan had just WCW, so we're forcing it down our throats here, and kind of like it's a backtrack to go to the main event. But this was the new generation. Owen Hart, 1-2 Kid were just fantastic here. I loved this match.
It was absolutely superb, sublime. Go out your way to just even watch this if you're going to watch something. Honestly, absolutely brilliant match. And like you say there, the sharpshooter very cleverly used to be the finish of this match as well. And obviously, 1-2-3 kick was definitely in no position but to submit at this point. So this was solid. And again, it's Bret Hart's finishing move as well. So it's always continue playing along the lines here of the, the continuity of can Owen do what Bret has done. And I really thought that was a nice taste.
Definitely. I think it's the start of that kind of build to the Owen becoming the King of Hearts and then kind of going on to SummerSlam. I know we've spoiled the ending of the tournament for people already during this by saying that, but I just think it's Owen Hart. Everybody knows Owen Hart gets this one, but this match is just great from top to bottom. It's so easy to watch, and I think I've watched it 3 times when we were going to do this because it was just. I don't know, just everything in it was good. Plus, it makes you feel better about the main event when you go back and watch this.
Yeah, absolutely, indeed. There, yeah, absolutely. And like you say, I can't wait to talk about the new generation part because obviously, like you said, there they show like these pictures of like Hulk Hogan of like old, and it's like all the superstars of today like new, and it's like it's clearly bitterness that Hogan had gone to WCW. Now we're building up Hogan versus Flair at that point. Clearly, was the change of the guard. This was the real birth and starting point of the new generation. But like you said there, and we'll just bring it up very quickly now because the main event, obviously, we won't talk about it yet, but the main event is Roddy Piper versus Jerry Lawler, the King. It's actually 2 40-year-olds, and it's the first time ever 2 people in their 40s had main evented the pay-per-view. So it kind of was a bit conflicting at the same time. So it's very interesting with their moments. But obviously, we had a different match that was going to take place, obviously, because, well, we've had the semi-finals of the King of the Ring, so we need to have a bit of a break before the final. So the match that we got was the tag team championships. We had the Headshrinkers defending against Yokozuna and Crush. Of course, Yokozuna and Crush there were with Mr. Fuji. I can see him unhappy already. Mr. Fuji and James E. Cornette. And Alpha and Lou Albano were with the Headshrinkers, of course. Yeah, I mean, the one thing you've got to know anything about the Headshrinkers, if you didn't know going in for your game plan, do not attack their heads. It's one of the fun parts of nostalgia from 90s wrestling for me. You just, any Samoan, you don't bang their head, don't headbutt them, you don't put their head first to the ground. And it just seemed like that Yoko and Crush didn't learn that lesson at all.
Definitely, man, but just kind of get out the fact that this match was so bad once it was like the referee was so awkward in this one as well. Like it just felt like he didn't really know how to ref. But like you said, the Headshrinkers, I never enjoyed them. This was before my time as well. Like this is before I started watching wrestling. Like I think with 94, I would have been 2. I would have been turning 3, depending the date for this one. Was this before June the 10th? I would have been 2 or 3, whatever it was. And I can't remember this. I've never went back and watched the Headshrinkers. Maybe watched 1 or 2 of their matches, but this one hasn't made me want to go back and watch it. And then this was like when we're coming to the end of those. We've still got a wee bit before we get to the end of the gimmicks, but like this is getting like the gimmicks are getting less. So before we start to get to like the Austin era and that kind of stuff, is they're starting to get less because like Crush, we didn't see like a new kind of Crush coming in, but we would have probably seen that in the 80s and early 90s. Yokozuna as well, didn't get that kind of sumo look stuff, and so stuff started moving on. But this match was for me was hard to watch. I was calling you names again, Steve. I'm sorry about that, but it's hard to watch.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing what your final rating of this match is going to be. But just to go give people how this sort of finished up, because it looked like that obviously the heels eventually get there. Obviously, Fatu does this sort of inside-out clothesline, which, of course, Fatu is, of course, Rikishi, for those people that are unaware of as well. But, yeah, I mean, the Headshrinkers, they look like they could be in a position where they could going to be losing those belts, but Lex Luger comes down to ringside. Lex Luger had been cost a place in the King of the Ring tournament by Crush, so there had been like a sort of brewing rivalry there. So Lex Luger coming down to ringside led then to what would be the finish where the Headshrinkers would retain. Another sort of crappy sort of finish, really, a roll up here. But obviously after the match, we see then a bit of an attack with everyone sort of Crush and Lex Luger on the floor. Yokozuna, the Headshrinkers in the ring. There's a point where Crush almost being babyface like says, I don't care, there's 3 guys in the ring, I'm going to get in there and try and get involved, but doesn't get anywhere for it. But yeah, it's a bit of an interesting match, this one. I must admit, different to you, I mean, the Headshrinkers were around when I started, so I do have a bit of nostalgia going back and watching the Headshrinkers, but Yokozuna for me is probably the biggest surprise in this match because obviously up until WrestleMania 10 he was like a champion for like nearly like a good 9 months to a year, 2-time WWE champion, and you can see this is the turning point where he starts falling down the pecking order in WWE at this point. But to give the times and to give a rating, this match was 9 minutes and 16 seconds, 1.5 star from Dave Meltzer. Barry, I think everybody's on the edge of their seat for this one. What did you give?
God, man, this was terrible. It really was terrible. Was it the year before this? 1993, Yokozuna bet Hulk Hogan for the belt with the infamous camera flash thing or whatever they done, and it was so. But like, he went from that to like a tag match, which was like, how did you get from there to here? Like, how did Vince drop the ball? I think he could have done a little bit more than what he did do, but it is what it is. No, this wasn't for me. This was you getting cussed out against Steve. Me thinking that I was like, he's always giving me duds. He's giving me these terrible pay-per-views anytime I come on his channel. But you saved it with the Owen and 1-2-3 Kid match. It was that saved it.
Absolutely. Well, I like to know I can save it somewhere. There definitely some fun parts in this show, and for Barry, this isn't one of them. For me, obviously the interest in this match is not as high because you've got the King of the Ring dominating the whole evening. You've got what I think was a very good match between Bret Hart and Diesel as well. So this one for me does kind of fall about the interest side. So I would go probably I agree with Dave. I think a 1.5, and I don't always agree a lot with Dave, but I seem to be quite a bit on this show, if I'm being brutally honest. But that was that match indeed. But obviously, this then takes us towards the finals of the King of the Ring. But just before we do, Owen Hart is with Todd Pentkill backstage, and he actually reminds us it's Father's Day, and he says Happy Father's Day to his dad. Obviously, him and Bret are obviously brothers as well, and it's saying like Bret Hart lost, and I'm going to go and win. It was really rubbing it down the throat once again there. I thought that was a nice touch before coming into this match.
It was, man. It was I think every interview, kind of the wee segments that we're doing before matches or in between them, was done perfectly on this King of the Ring pay-per-view. They made you want to see what's coming up next. They told you what happened before, and then kind of getting you to tune into like the kind of weekly show as well, which I thought was cool. All of them were done fantastic. Even the like stuff about Bret, all that kind of stuff was all fantastic. I enjoyed every wee segment on this show completely.
Absolutely, indeed. And obviously, this was your finals of the King of the Ring tournament. Donavon, that's the guy I picked with Razor Ramon coming out there. And of course, Owen Hart there as well. And there was a little segment as well just before we go to this match where Bret Hart was looking for Jim the Anvil Neidhart backstage. Couldn't find him anywhere. Was angry as well, was screaming for his name, obviously realizing that he didn't get the help he was looking for. And obviously, probably, Bret being the babyface that Bret was at that time, probably wasn't happy that he lost by DQ. Probably would have, dare I say, prefer to lose by pinfall. It seems very weird, as a very babyface thing to do. But obviously looking for the Anvil, couldn't find him. But going into the match itself then between these two, this one again was not a long match again. This was only 6 minutes and 35 seconds between these two. But really the main story comes towards the end of the match. Obviously, Owen Hart had been having a bit of the advantage, Razor making the comeback, Razor going for the Razor's Edge. But of course, standing in a very awkward position, looked like he's going to go for it. Obviously, the back body drop is done to reverse it, which, because they were near the ropes, Razor went over the top rope and to the floor and seemed to tweak his knee in the process. At this point, the referee is distracted with Owen Hart. And then, of course, Jim the Anvil Neidhart comes down to the floor, checks on Razor, gets him up, looks like he's about to put him back in the ring. Just as he's about to go back in the ring, he clotheslines him to the floor. The heel turn is on, and it's clear to see then what the direction was. He throws Razor into the ring post as well, throws him into the ring, and then Owen Hart, I believe, does a flying elbow off the top rope to get the 1, the 2, and the 3. So Jim the Anvil Neidhart had turned heel, was never intended there to help Bret Hart. He was there to help Owen. He was to make sure that Owen wasn't to actually was to win Owen to win the King of the Ring, but also for Bret not to lose the championship, because obviously at that time frame, more than not, the winner of the King of the Ring would go on to bigger and better things. So Owen obviously wanted to be the one to take that belt from Bret Hart, knowing that he had actually beaten him previously at WrestleMania 10. What were your thoughts with the match itself? And I think probably the bigger picture there, the storytelling of what we got, the big payoff at the end of this.
The match itself was kind of, I didn't enjoy it as much. I think they've had better matches. I think they could have done a much better kind of story. I think, see, because it was so short, like it was kind of, if it was maybe 10 or 15 minutes, if we didn't have that main event, if they stretched this out a little bit, we could have enjoyed a really good match and then told the story. But it was kind of that Jim coming out, hitting that clothesline, setting up for that kind of Owen Hart's going to come and get Bret in the future, all that kind of stuff. Then you've also got like all the stories you could build off that is huge. But yeah, it's the start of the story to get to my favourite match of all time. But the match itself just felt kind of like it was just there. I think it felt kind of rushed. Like they could have done something a little bit more with it. I don't know if Razor just wasn't wanted to. I don't know. It just felt like something like maybe Razor Known wanted to have a longer match because in the main event they couldn't, and I don't. They could have cut time somewhere, but they did have a ton of matches on this show. But I would have liked to have seen maybe this be the main event, especially with that turn, with like Jim coming out turning heel, and then kind of being like, that's why Owen's King of the Ring is going to come in on and face Bret Hart. It would have been cool to have that as the main event, and then the crowning and that kind of stuff and finish the show there. But it didn't. But the match itself was okay. It was, for me, it was kind of missed the point.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It felt a bit rushed, this match. I think there was a situation where you could have argued and said that these guys, it's the final. Let's give this a bit more time, especially when you look at the main event. Obviously, they probably had more time and arguably probably shouldn't have had more time. I look and say that, it's a big crowning defining moment for Owen Hart. There's nothing to take away the specialness. Have these two had better matches together with better chemistry in other occasions? Yes, absolutely. But this job here was to make sure that Owen Hart was to get over as King of the Ring. And they did. They delivered this match in abundance of what they need to do with storytelling wise. And obviously, when you get to the point where, Owen is then crowned, he's sitting there in the big throne. And obviously, he's got, Jack Tunney was going to be the one that's going to crown him King of the Ring. I don't want Jack Tunney. The only person I can trust in the family, Jim the Anvil Neidhart, is going to be the one putting in, the robe around him, giving him the scepter and putting the crown on his head. And then Owen proclaimed himself going forward, not the Rocket. You're going to call me the King of Hearts. And for me personally, it's iconic. It's one of those moments like you go through the King of the Ring victories and you always remember a lot of those iconic moments. Obviously, Bret Hart the first year, then with the attack of Jerry Lawler, 316. Just kicked your ass, Steve Austin. We've got all these famous King of the Ring winners, and Owen really stands out when he's one as well. He's just going to be one that's going to be remembered forever, in my personal opinion. What was your feeling of this sort of ceremony we had afterwards?
Ceremonies, I never enjoyed that much, but I like this one and the Austin one just because it's like the kind of this one sets up the story. He wants to change his name, move away from that Rocket kind of style that he used to be with Coco Beware and that kind of stuff when he used to be a tag team with him, moving away from that and coming this really big heel instead of from kind of where he was. People weren't taking him serious as a heel. Now you can be like, oh, he's a bad guy. But I think it was cool. Like the Austin one is how they done that as well. But just brought back to me the year after this, 1995. I think Mabel wins the. Just because we were talking about Mabel earlier, he wins the King of the Ring after this. Just because we were like, how terrible that match was, but he wins it. But I never. Putting the crown on and all that stuff is just 90s cheesiness, isn't it? But like. It has its place, especially I think when they're putting the crown on and they're going to be a bad guy, like they're turning heel. It makes it like, oh, this is so cheesy, but this guy's putting the crown on, he's waving and just acting like a dick, and you're like, oh, do I need to watch this? And you still watch it. So it has its point, and I enjoyed it. Just a wee bit inside of me was like, this is actually pretty cool.
Yeah, I think Owen lapped up this moment. I think it was one of his career-defining moments. Obviously, we go with, like you said, the WrestleMania 10 match, the SummerSlam match of where it goes to a finishing destination. I remember being on a UK tour actually in '94. My mum took me to, I think it was at the Royal Albert Hall, and I remember obviously the continuation of this feud. The British Bulldog would actually be on Bret's side, so it was actually a tag team match that main evented that show. Was Bret Hart versus and the Bulldog against Owen and Jim Neidhart, and I do think that if I'm not mistaken, the babyfaces went over in this night in London, but obviously not something that would ever make the realms of WWE TV or even Coliseum videos or anything like that. But certainly for me, it's a fun time. It's a career-defining moment. It's something that, magical, and obviously leads to perhaps a bit of what links into today. Obviously, we have the Owen Hart tournament going on. It's the first sort of mention we can really get of Owen Hart in wrestling for the longest time period. The tournament is being done by AEW, obviously, at this point. Maybe is a solidify and a tribute to perhaps even this show, maybe looking back at it. But if it was my personal opinion, this should have closed the show. I think if we'd have closed off here, I think that this show would have got a higher rating. Obviously, we'll go into what the other details are in a minute, but do you think solely this should have been the closing of the show?
It should have been this should have either closed it, or it should have been the Bret Hart Diesel closing it. You could have done it like Bret Hart Diesel closing it, and Bret Hart's always trying to look over his shoulder and make sure that Jim or Owen isn't going to come out and cost him the title. You could have done it like that, but this should have closed it. Really, we should have finished on this, because after this, it goes downhill, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely goes downhill.
The wagon, but I think it was the story. The best thing about King of Ring '94 is definitely the story all the way through it. You can see that WWE is really caring about Bret Hart, Owen Hart, this feud. Like, they want to build it. They know they've got money there. They want to try and keep growing it, and then also they've got Diesel coming up. You've got Michaels there. You've got Razor. You've got like a ton of star power, and then they want to make sure all these guys are going to get their opportunity, get into those positions, protect them like they were doing with Diesel. And it's cool to see, especially when you look now and then it's like they're just like fucking whack a tag team match together for Backlash for no reason. But like back then, they actually cared, like months of storytelling and writing, instead of from just, let's just put these guys in a 6-man tag match because there's nothing else to do for Sunday.
Yeah, no, I think you make valid points. And like we say here, like maybe not every match has the highest match quality of this, but the story throughout the whole evening, you can see it's been carefully thought out or carefully put together, like you said there, with the careful consideration of Owen and Bret, that storyline. The tournament itself has stuff going throughout the evening. Will we get, with the 1, 2, 3 kid, what's going on with that? So they really built this tournament together really, really well. And of course, that plays into Owen's advantage to get to the final as well. Razor has to go 3 solid matches where arguably, yes, Owen did have a tougher in the end semi-final, but obviously, 1, 2, 3 going to be massively softened up. So they did this storytelling throughout the evening really, really well, in my opinion. I do think it's worth checking out the tournament for people that haven't, if they've not done it before. But particularly the highlights, as we said, would be all the Owen Hart matches, but particularly him versus the 1, 2, 3 kid, and of course that final as well there. But let's move on then, shall we? And give our star ratings quickly though, just before that, actually, because we've not done that. What would you give the star rating then for Owen Hart versus Razor Ramon? We're solely going with the match here.
So with the match, it would be a 2 out of 5 stars, but including the story into that, I would take it up to a 3, because the story really sells the match. So I would say I'll go for a 2.5 stars, just to be kind, because the story helps it, and the wrestling was Razor Ramon and Owen Hart in the ring together. Even if it's not that good, it's still going to be fun to watch.
Absolutely, I agree with you 100%. I think 2.5 up to 3, I think is good. So I'll be the generous one. I'll do the 2.75 just to bounce it in the middle there. But like you say, the match itself is probably a 2. Like you say, it's almost a full point there with that heel turn and stuff at the end. But let's move on then to what was the main event of this show. And obviously, we said it's the new generation, and we've got 2 guys in their 40s wrestling. It's Roddy Piper versus Jerry Lawler. These 2 have some backstage stuff as well for Coliseum video as well. Jerry Lawler kind of saying that he's going to make an oblivion of Roddy Piper, and how, kind of mocking Roddy as well, because Roddy said that he was going to win this match and take the money and give it to kids in hospital in Canada. Jerry Lawler, even on microphone in the ring, actually clarifying this to the crowd, saying mocking the idea of it and saying, no, that's not going to happen. And I'm not going to give a cent of my money to anyone in hospital or for any of the peons in the crowd here. Jerry Lawler being classic douchebag king, if you want, but obviously he's a king, so I can understand why they've put it in the main event. And I think as well they want to have a feel good factor with this finish. But obviously the King's Court stuff going on, that's where this really got started. Obviously Jerry Lawler saying that the King's Court is going to be much better quality than what was the rubbish Piper's Pit back in the day. We obviously see calling out someone as well, which was meant to be Roddy Piper, but was someone really skinny in a t-shirt and a kilt, and just not really any way near what Roddy Piper would look like, and just got the guy to kiss his feet. It's very, very bizarre, to say the very least. And obviously Roddy Piper saying he's going to get the revenge, basically. So before we go into any details of the match, what were your thoughts of the build here? You said you watched a couple of the Raws. I'm expecting hate.
That was shit, man. It really was. I don't even know what else to say. It was bad. Honestly, it really, really But it was that time as well when Raw was pretty terrible to watch, wasn't it? Like, it wasn't. It
Mm,
feels like the Raws back then feel like the Raws now. Don't waste
yeah.
your time watching them. And God, YouTube's here, we can just catch clips. But a fun thing is, I just looked. AJ Styles is the same age as Jerry the King here, and Edge currently is 48. That makes him older than both these guys in the ring now, which is insane. We've got AJ Styles and Edge still wrestling and putting on great matches, and these guys put on this terrible show. It's like, what changed between here and like then and now? Like, and AJ does all the flippy stuff. So people saying that, can I do flippy stuff till in your 40s? Well, AJ's doing it good. So I don't know what's happening. But this one was the build to this one was just awkward. It was just pretty much them all just talking. Like you say, they brought that skinny guy out to do the kiss the feet thing, and it didn't really make sense why they were going against each other. I know it's like a throwback to the territory time, but it just kind of felt
Yeah.
like, why are we doing this in '94? Like, could we have not done this back in like '89 or '90 or something instead of from '94?
Yeah, for me, the whole excuse here seems to be Jerry Lawler's the king, so put it on King of the Ring. And Roddy Piper's not been in the ring for 2 years, making his comeback. Yes, he was in great shape, I would say, but obviously, we're not talking about a technical prowess from Roddy Piper. It's more like your fisticuffs and stuff like that throughout the match there. And obviously, I think the best part of this whole thing was Roddy Piper's entrance, just because of the fact he came down with this skinny guy. There was loads of bagpipes going on as well. That stuff was all right, but this is a long 12 minutes and 30-second match here. Now, for me, there's not even much detail I can give. We've got, chasing around the ringside. Jerry Lawler seems more interested in fighting the skinny guy around the ring rather than actually fighting Roddy Piper. He's running away every turn. Roddy's just hitting shots in here and there. Lawler eventually gets a sleeper hold on. There is a moment where there is a ref bump, and it looks like that Jerry Lawler then sort of takes the advantage using a foreign object to hit Roddy Piper, and it does look like he's going to get a pinfall victory because of the fact that the referee, Earl Hebner, is sort of getting up slowly, making the count, and we get to where it looks like it's going to go down for the 3, and this skinny guy on the outside actually pushes Lawler's feet off. That's the only exciting part in the match for me. But then obviously we get to the point after that then where Lawler's then sort of given this awful side suplex into a pinfall, I think is the best way to put it. And Roddy Piper picks up the victory. I mean, for me, this is a very awkward match to say the very least.
It really is, man. It's just kind of like Piper looks good. This kind of style of Piper's what I remember for WCW, because obviously he goes over to there and faces like Hogan and stuff like that. So not the best match him against Hogan, but it's better than this. Like, so
much better.
This one's just, I don't know, it doesn't make any sense. It's like, why is it here? Why have you, like, Diesel, Bret, Owen against the 1, 2, 3 kid? I keep got to call him 6 because he looks like his WCW character here.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3 kid, which they could have made longer. Or Owen against Razor, they could have made longer. They could literally split up like 3 minutes of each, give them to those matches instead of from having, because this is just disastrous. And like you said, the King running around outside chasing the skinny guy. I don't even know the skinny guy's name. I'm just referring to him as the skinny guy. I said to you before, I watched this twice. I don't know if they say his name. Like, I just completely gone over my head to just call him the skinny guy.
They don't say the guy's name on the show that I remember, and I'm now just kind of breezing through Wikipedia, and I don't see a name here on first quick glance. I'm going with a quick glance here. So if anyone does know the name of this person, then feel free to make mention of it for us in the comment section. We will give it a shout out as well. But yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a bizarre one. For me personally, I understand why they've done this match. You've got Roddy Piper in. It's a big deal. He's probably name value. And you want to send the fans home happy. That seems to be what they want to do a lot of the time around then. Obviously, we mentioned we did a review for Rated R's channel of WrestleMania 9. And of course, even though Yoko won, they had to have Hogan win the belt as well, which is another political discussion we could have for a long time. Go and check that stream out, actually, if you get an opportunity at any point when you're watching this video, because that was definitely one. I even though it was a car wreck of a WrestleMania to review, I had a lot of fun reviewing that show. But at the same time here, I mean, you could have trimmed this down so much because, I mean, this match should have been less than half of the time. Like you say, some of the King of the Ring matches could have benefited from time, and we could have just got to the nitty gritty of like Lawler chases him for a couple of minutes, quick ref bump. Lawler looks like he's going to get the cheap victory, get the near fall, and obviously where the feet are pushed off, do that awkward suplex to finish, and then boom, that's it, match done. Do it in 4 to 5 minutes, and I think I would have given this a more kinder rating than what I'm going to.
I think it would have been cool as well if they put maybe Piper against Shawn Michaels. Just thrown that out there. It's just like that could have been something interesting. Michaels is there, got a match that we've never seen before, really, and then just kind of finish the show. Let the new generation go over instead of from whatever abomination this match was.
I actually say I love that suggestion because I don't think we ever got an idea of Roddy Piper versus Shawn Michaels. What a dream match that would be when you go to see what Shawn Michaels would go on to do in his career as well. There, so outstanding suggestion with that there. And I mean, there's not really much more I can left to say positive. Have you got anything left to say that about this match that we could add on before we give our star ratings?
Finish the King of the Ring pay-per-view at the last kind of segment with Owen Hart getting crowned, and don't watch this.
We said we'd keep it positive. It's positive for the viewer, perhaps not for the match itself.
That was positive, and you can finish about 12 minutes early. So positively, you can finish 12 minutes early and go to the pub or something instead of from watching this.
Pub is always a good place to be. Well, Dave Meltzer gave this a 1 star. I had this down as a dud until that near fall moment where I did buy for a second that Lawler was going to win it, even though I probably shouldn't have done. I have seen this show before. I mean, for me, I'm going to give it half a star or quarter of a star just for that near fall alone. But the rest of it was a bit off this match. It never really clicked.
No, I was a dud, man. I just gave it complete nothing. This was terrible to watch.
Well, then I think what we need to do then is to give our full rating for the entire King of the Ring 1994. What would you give this? And instead of like a star rating, we'll give this a score out of 10, out between 1 and 10 or 0 and 10 if you want. What would you give this for people as a recommendation to go and watch?
I'd say 7. A good 7. It's cool to see Owen Hart become the Owen Hart that we know. So it's cool to see Owen Hart kind of grow into that. So I'd say a 7. And then you've got that pretty much everything Owen Hart does in here is cool. It builds up to that SummerSlam match that I love, and also Bret and Diesel. So there is good moments in it, and also the way the segments are done. So the way kind of the wee interviews are done, telling stories, all works. It makes terrible matches a wee bit better than what they should have been because they're completely terrible. The wee segments and the wee kind of talking bits before it and after it, like the Jeff Jarrett and 1, 2, 3 Kid, the pile drivers really saved that match, because that match itself would have just been, if he just walked away, it would have been like, what's the point? But I think there is stuff there, so I'd say a 7.
Do you know what? I think you're right there with that, because I originally came in the mindset of this we're going maybe like a 6.5 or a 6 or something like that area. But you when we've been discussing this and going through detail, I think WWE did a really good job on this night with the storytelling. They had a mission, they had a goal of what they wanted to do. They made the tournament interesting throughout the night. Like you said, the segments all made sense. They didn't drag out too long. You knew where you were going to go with the next segment, and it made things better than even when some matches weren't so good. So I think you're on the head there with a 7 out of 10 for importance of defining moments in careers, especially when we talk about Owen Hart. That's, it's a one that's always going to be linked with his career, and that was very magically and very well done, particularly with, the match with the 1, 2, 3 Kid, like we mentioned there, the ceremony of the final, the heel turn from the anvil, the way that played into the story of Bret Hart's match as well. All of that is almost like it's 9, 10 out of 10 booking. It's really, really well done. So there are some real positive things that come from this show. And obviously we mentioned Diesel as well. We mentioned the idea of new generation. Yes, they kind of let it go with the main event doesn't connect there. But Diesel is someone that does go on to win the championship. Obviously, he doesn't win it from Bret Hart in there. But obviously, Diesel had a killer 94 when you look back at it. Probably one of the strongest years of his career. Had the most eliminations in the Royal Rumble match that year. Went on to win the IC title from Ramon, who'd had it for a long time at that point. This champion versus champ match against Bret Hart doesn't win it. Bret loses the belt to Bob Backlund, of course, later in the year, which, of course, not quite new generation either when you think about it. But then Diesel obviously winning it, if I'm not mistaken, in like 9 seconds in Madison Square Garden, which I think was one of the fastest championship matches ever. And Diesel would have that really super long reign. So there was definitely some pushes that going on with that. So I mean, they had some direction things they wanted to do for the future. So there are some strong points to this show. And for me, obviously, we've been selfish. The whole capture of this, it's all revolved a lot of it around Owen, and obviously with the Owen Hart Cup going on right now as well, there is a lot of nostalgia, and I think that's playing into watching the show as well. So I mean, would you say, I think it's definitely worth people going and checking out if they've got an opportunity to for a good couple of hours and just skip the unnecessary parts?
I think even watching the unnecessary parts, because it makes those bits that are like good even better, because you've sat through like a Mabel match, which is never fantastic. It's just like we talked about Mabel as well at the start and coming at his entrance. His entrance was fun. Then the Jarrett stuff, like we said, but it really is Owen Hart's the star of this show, isn't it? And it really sets up for the Owen that we all kind of know. Because before this, back then, if I remember right, he wasn't really getting took serious as the bad guy. Like the WrestleMania 10 one was kind of when we started teasing that, but he wasn't really getting took serious, is it? So this is the kind of moment when it's like, I'm going to be the bad guy. And then also you can see similarities between this and then when Austin turns heel later at the later kind of King of the Ring. So it's there. They're starting to build it. They know how to do it. And like you said, the storytelling in this is actually really good. But how terrible some of the matches are, WWE done well to save this show.
Absolutely, indeed, there, absolutely, and obviously some big things surrounding the company at that time. They obviously mentioned that the steroid scandal, which of course Vince would go on to triumph in the end. Of course, I'm sure that's been covered on Dark Side of the Ring, so definitely go and check that out for that sort of content. But is there anything you'd like to add before we wrap up the show today?
Just finish before this match, the finishing match that we were talking about, Piper against the King. I forgot it. Just in my brain already there, Steve. I know what to keep it in there. Just finish before that. You see Owen Hart get his crown on. That's it. Turn it off. Go relax. Go and watch something better. Don't continue through this pay-per-view because it'll ruin it for you.
Well, that's the advice there from Barry for you that time there. And I've got to say, overall, it's a fun watch. And like you say, probably that last bit is the struggle, but great storytelling throughout the whole evening. But we won't go on for any further. If you've enjoyed this video, then please like it, share as well, subscribe as well to the channel if you haven't already. That stuff really helps the monetization, well, not monetization, but the analytical side of YouTube, helps spread the video amongst YouTube. So if you can do that, be very, very grateful indeed. Appreciate everyone that has been watching as well. And comment if you're watching on demand as well. Let us know your thoughts of King of the Ring 1994. And of course, Barry from NonStop Wrestling Chat has got a fantastic channel as well. As you can see, he does not hold back. If he's got an opinion, he will call it out. He's not going to beat around the bush. So make sure if you like it, and I can tell you right now, the WrestleMania Backlash, particularly those predictions there, it's a fun little video to watch, particularly if you like to see him rant. So I reckon that you should go and check that video out. But I will leave the link of Barry's channel in the description of this video, so you can just click on it and then go and subscribe to his channel, because honestly, some great stuff over there. But Barry, thank you so much for being on the channel. As always, any final words?
No, subscribe to Steve. Always hits out better content than me. I know he's trying to talk me up there. I just shout about wrestling and how terrible it is today. But Steve actually reviews it, talks about it, enjoys it. He has some soul for it. But me and Steve have done tons of podcasts on my channel where he bitches about wrestling as well. So go check those out.
We do seem to know how to get that side out, don't we? And we've done plenty of retro reviews as well. So if you've enjoyed this retro review, there is a playlist as well. Go and check out some other retro reviews in the playlist. And myself and Barry, we've done a number of shows together as well. So make sure and go check some of those out. But that's all from us anyway. Thank you for watching. Really appreciate everyone that's been in the chat as well. And we'll see you very, very soon. Take care. This has been SCW Rewind. And hey, why not do us a favor as well? If you've got a show that you would like reviewed, why not drop it in the comments of this video? See you soon. Thanks for watching. Take care.